Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Nusantara Room. I hope everyone is still energized as we are about to start a very intriguing session here on the stage. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is the second day of IPA, and we are going to focus this afternoon on CCS and CCUS, as mentioned by our President Prabowo Subianto during the inauguration moment just before this one, how important it is for Indonesia. And before we dive into today's conversation, let's take a moment to understand the broader picture, why CCS matters more than ever. And please turn your attention to the screen for a short opening video that sets the stage for the next session of the plenary. Let's watch it.
Unlocking CCS potential as enabler for clean energy investment. Indonesia berpeluang mendapatkan manfaat besar dari teknologi penyimpanan karbon seperti Carbon Capture and Storage atau disingkat CCS. Teknologi tersebut berperan penting dalam mendukung dekarbonisasi sektor hulu migas dan meningkatkan daya saing industri domestik. Secara global, pemanfaatan carbon capture and storage serta carbon capture utilization and storage diperkirakan menghadirkan peluang investasi lebih dari $1 triliun AS pada tahun 2050. Lalu, seberapa besar Indonesia bisa mendulang manfaatnya? Di Asia Tenggara, Indonesia memiliki kapasitas penyimpanan karbon terbesar dengan sejumlah reservoir besar di Kalimantan Timur, Sumatera, dan Jawa. Keberadaannya bisa dimanfaatkan untuk menarik investasi asing, terutama dari negara yang memiliki keterbatasan penyimpanan karbon. Indonesia juga mempunyai sejumlah proyek CCS tahap awal yang cukup menjanjikan. Diperkirakan lebih dari 20 juta ton karbon per tahun yang bisa disimpan. Guna memaksimalkan potensi tersebut, Indonesia perlu menjalin kerjasama bilateral untuk menemukan solusi yang ekonomis untuk cross-border CCS, mendukung pengembangan melalui insentif untuk aktivasi bisnis dan komersialisasi jangka panjang. Selain itu, konsistensi regulasi serta kolaborasi lintas sektor dalam percepatan perizinan dan pembangunan merupakan tugas besar dari pemerintah saat ini yang diperlukan oleh industri. Dengan begitu, Indonesia bisa menarik investasi yang besar dan menciptakan efek berganda, seperti penciptaan lapangan kerja, membantu dekarbonisasi lapangan minyak dan gas seperti Abadi, Tangguh, dan Saka Kemang, sekaligus mendukung daya saing industri non-migas seperti semen dan baja dengan membantu pengurangan emisi. CCS juga akan memfasilitasi tumbuhnya industri baru seperti blue hydrogen, blue ammonia, dan bioenergi CCS sehingga konsisten dengan fokus hilirisasi pemerintah. Dengan demikian, carbon capture and storage menjadi elemen penting dalam mendukung daya tarik investasi Indonesia, memperkuat daya saing industri dalam negeri, dan memastikan Indonesia tetap sejalan dengan komitmen dekarbonisasi global.
All right, so that was the video, and as suggested and shown on the video, the session will explore how carbon capture and storage, or CCS, can drive downstream investments, create jobs, boost industrial growth, and help Indonesia compete in a low-carbon economy. And as usual, as how we do it in our sessions especially, we invite everyone to please be interactive as well, so you can actually have your questions addressed to any of the speaker that will be presented on the stage, by just submitting your questions after you scan the barcode shown on the screen. All right, so we are ready for the session to start. Now it's time for me to introduce the moderator. Please welcome the Vice President, Global Head of CCS at Wood Mackenzie, and Industry Leader in Energy Transition, Analytics and Strategy, Mr. John Story. Welcome to the stage.
Hi, thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really looking forward to moderating this next discussion. So I think without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists, so if I could ask them to come up and join me on stage. Great. So before we get started on the discussion, let me just quickly briefly introduce our speakers. So firstly, at the far end, we have Egon van der Hoeven, who's President Asia Pacific for ExxonMobil Low Carbon Solutions. And he's been in that role since the start of this year. He's responsible for developing ExxonMobil's lower emission portfolio in Asia Pacific with the objective of creating long-term shareholder value and to support global emissions reduction efforts. So prior to this appointment, Egon has been responsible for ExxonMobil's business development activities in the low-carbon solution space in Southeast Asia, with a focus on cross-border carbon capture and sequestration value chains, all of which we're going to talk about later on today. He has more than 25 years of oil and gas experience and has worked globally in upstream exploration, gas marketing, and midstream. Egon was a management consultant and has an M.SIE in electrical engineering from Delft University of Technology and an MBA in strategic management. Next, we have Pak Noor Arifin Mohammed. He is the Director of Oil and Gas Engineering and Environment for the Directorate General of Oil and Gas. He's been there since at least 2017, holding senior roles in planning and infrastructure and upstream, leading up to the role that he now carries. Next to Pak Noor is Keith Tan he's the Deputy Secretary Energy and Carbon for the Ministry of Trade and Industry of Singapore. He was appointed to that role in August 2023, and Deputy Secretary Energy and Carbon on the 1st of April 2024. He's held appointments in the Singapore Tourism Board, the Ministries of Defence, Home Affairs and Trade and Industry, as well as the Public Service Division and Civil Service College. He's currently on the boards of the Urban Redevelopment Authority, JTC Corporation and Singapore Energy Assets Limited. He has a bachelor's degree in English and a certificate in Russian studies from Princeton University and a master's degree in management from the Peter Drucker School of Management, Claremont Graduate University. Next we have Pak Dannif Danusaputro, who's the Director of Finance and Investment. Going to be hot topics today for PT Pertamina Hulu Energi. He's CFO and Investment Director of PHE. He joined in early 2004, and prior to that he was CEO of Pertamina New and Renewable Energy, a position he held since 2021. He has more than 25 years of professional working experience, and before Pertamina held various leadership roles in global financial institutions, such as being the CEO of Mandiri Securitas, Country Director of Bank of Mandiri, Singapore, Senior Director of CAP Asia, and Director Structured Finance and Standard Chartered Bank, Singapore. So he has a deep and vast experience in structured financing, debt and equity. Again, topics that we'll touch on today. Next to him we have Pak Eddie Riva'i, who's Legal, External Affairs and Circular Economy Director for PT Chandra, Asri, Pacific. He's a strategic leader with 30 years plus experience in petrochemicals, sustainability and business strategy. At Chandra Asri, he drives regulatory engagement, circular economy initiatives, and the integration of carbon capture and storage strategies to support Indonesia's low-carbon transition. He's a committed advocate for ESG and responsible care and champions recycling innovations and industry collaboration to address climate and plastic waste challenges. And last but not least, and whatever happened to ladies first, but we have Ibu Belladonna Maulianda, Bella, who's the Executive Director of the Indonesian CCS Center. Dr. Bella is a leading CCS expert with over 20 years' experience in the global energy sector, including the energy transition. She holds a PhD in CCS CCUS and has played a key role in shaping Indonesia's CCS regulations and bilateral discussions. As a pioneer of Indonesia's regional CCS hub, she has driven policy development and cross-border collaborations. She's established a strong connection with global organizations like the UN, IEA, and Clean Energy Ministerial, as well as governments of the US, UK, Singapore, Canada, Australia, Japan, and Malaysia. Domestically, she has strong ties with key stakeholders and government bodies. She currently serves as the Senior Special Assistant to the Deputy Chairman of the People's Consultative Assembly, MPR. With experience across Canada, Scotland, Malaysia and Indonesia, she remains at the forefront of CCS and energy transition developments. So I think you'll agree we've got a fair amount of expertise and knowledge on the panel today. Just to elaborate on the introduction earlier on the topic, we're going to discuss how Indonesia can accelerate investment in CCS. I think specifically here in the non-upstream sectors, which we talked about this morning, including what we describe as the hard-to-abate sectors. Hard to abate meaning emissions that are difficult to capture, which means expensive. We're going to talk about how investments can be secured and indeed accelerated. So we'll touch on what's happening already in Indonesia, address some of the key challenges, discuss what solutions might be needed, what learnings can be taken from other regions, cross-border issues, technology, business models, and finally some societal and stakeholder management issues. Just to quickly get us started, I'd like to set the scene a little bit by zooming out. Why are we all in this room? Because there's an issue with the climate caused by greenhouse gas emissions, and these need to be reduced with some urgency. CCS is a key part of this, and so the world got together and governments agreed to set emissions reduction targets called NDCs, nationally determined contributions, under the Paris Agreement. To deliver these targets, these same governments have established policies and regulations to enable these reductions. These in turn force a reaction from industry, which in theory should lead to a growing CCS sector over time. So with that, I'd like to start by looking at the landscape for CCS and CCUS in Indonesia. It's a new asset class. So really, yes, just to set the scene with beginning with the CCS landscape in Indonesia. So maybe to Pak Noor to start with, could I ask you to tell us a little bit about the CCS situation as you see it in Indonesia today? How is the government looking to encourage activity in the sector, particularly looking away just from oil and gas?
Thank you, Pak Jan, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, talking about the current situation about the CCS situation in Indonesia, I just want to continue what the Pak President mentioned before, that Indonesia is in the state of welcoming investment to support the nation vision about the energy resilience and energy sufficiency. So in this term, that for the CCS, you know that we already open the CCS storage or opportunities for investment. This is, we started around 2 years or 3 years ago. We do have regulation. We have series of regulation that make sure or for the investor to certain that the regulation will be for them. Yeah. The first is the ministerial regulation about CCS in 2023. This is about the CCS activities within the oil and gas working areas. And then we have the presidential regulation, presidential decree that widening the scope of the CCS in Indonesia and open not only in the working oil and gas working areas, but for the open areas that we do have explore or exploit the opportunities for the storage in the open areas. So, and currently, still in this line of preparing regulation, we are now preparing the guidelines for the company or for the industry to propose a work plan, investment work plan, and also guidelines for the safety. So, in short, that the government is ready for the CCS activities, and we have prepared a series of regulations to make sure that. Thanks.
Thank you. If I could perhaps throw the same question to Pak Dannif. and maybe elaborate a little bit from PHE's perspective on the project, level of project activity. Could you give us a flavor of the projects that are out there at the moment, and a thought about how they can go beyond just the upstream emissions and look at capturing third party from the rest of industry?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, on the landscape, I can say it has made a great progress, as Pak Noor mentioned. Thank you, Pak. From MEMR has issued the perman, right, that creating the guideline how to apply for licenses, and Pak Noor mentions, preparing all the guidelines for safety and whatnot. I think for Pertamina Hulu Energy, in this case, we are as a national oil company, we are putting a lot of resources on project level with our partner. We have made a great progress in terms of preparing ourselves to create a hub for the region, because we do believe scale is very important, right? Yes, this is a new sector, but we are very excited as a host company in Indonesia. We are showing to the world, right, to our neighboring country, that we are very serious, because all those potential storage are located in our working area, right? So we are very bullish. I do believe the government are also serious, and we have our neighboring country that also serious to create an ecosystem. Now, our focus just is on upstream, right? How to transport safely and to provide intermediate storage and piping and injections. We do monitor how the capturing process, which is also as important, and where is the most cost, right? As in Pertamina Group, we do have looking into this, and we are partnering, right, from on Pertamina Group, how to make sure that the capturing also can be as economical, right, to make sure the whole value chain is commercially viable.
Thank you. And perhaps to you, Bella, you've clearly been intimately involved in how Indonesia got to where it is on CCS. Looking forwards, what are the signposts that you would hope to see that would signify a healthy outlook for the CCS sector? What signposts would you look going forwards to signify a healthy development of the CCS sector in Indonesia? What would you like to see next?
Yeah, thank you for that. I just had a bad echo on my ears just now. So what would I look to see forward next? I think for sure we need to see more bilateral agreements with the other countries. That's what we're looking forward to. So hopefully we can finalize some of them in the near future with the neighboring countries, because it's going to unlock and activate the initial investment, whereas this initial investment will bring the initial infrastructure development, which later on can help to unlock the domestic emitters, for example, such as Chandra, Asri, and the other hard-to-abate industries. Whereas later on, unlocking these domestic markets and domestic industries can help to create the other multiplier effects, such as jobs creation and increasing on the economic growth to support the President Prabowo's target. And then probably the other thing that we should look forward to is how Indonesia can have a better geopolitical standing compared to the other neighboring countries, such as the other neighboring countries. Whereas Indonesia was the first and pioneer in terms of the CCS development in the region. We were the first one who developed the first LOI with Singapore, with Pak Kitan here. And also we developed the highest regulation within the region, which is the presidential regulation. But then we are aware that the other countries are also proceeding and then move forward with their regulatory framework. So I think Indonesia has to keep their momentum and then keep doing our best and progresses as a good and also great amazing work from the MEMR, from Pak Noor, Arifin, Muhammad, and also the MEMR team. So I think we have to keep keeping the pace and also developing the other derivative regulation and then the other enabler regulatory framework. So I think that's the second one. And then the third one, we have to, develop the younger generation to be able to be ready for the CCS industries. For example, Indonesia CCS Center just developed and launched the ICCSC Youth. It's the first and only one CCS student chapter in the world. So we're trying to give it back to the younger generation as well, and then try to do the upskilling and capacity building for the younger generation. So I think those three things that we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. And I think there's a few of those we'll touch on later. Certainly, I think the regional competition and the cross-border, the bilaterals. I think this is a question I'd like to ask everybody, being the first question. So maybe Egon, to you, coming from a major energy player with a global portfolio, how do you see Indonesia as a place to do CCS?
Thanks, John. Before I go and answer that question, maybe worthwhile sharing how we see CCS work in an economic viable way. And I'd like to point out the efforts we're doing in the US Gulf Coast. As a corporation, ExxonMobil has been very open and very committed to a net zero emissions by 2050. And to put that to action, we committed more than $30 billion to get there, to decarbonize our own asset base, but also to help others, governments and partners, to get there as well. When you think about $30 billion, that's about half the budget of the US EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And that is something that we are very and truly committed to. So we own and operate probably what is the world's largest integrated CCS system. It's a network of about 1,500 kilometers that combines and connects customers as well as storage sites all together. And we run it as a network. This network has the potential to really scale up over time. And our vision for that network is to ultimately capture and store about 100 million tons per year of CO2, which is an enormous number and far from where we are today. Today, however, we already signed up more than 14 million tons per year in commercial contracts, and we're well on our way to meet 30 million tons by 2030. What is working well for us in the US Gulf Coast is proximity and location. The network runs through the Houston Ship Channel and the heartland of the US petroleum industry. So having proximity to emissions and proximity to storage space is an important consideration. So when we bring this to a place like Indonesia, to have an economically viable project, it really is all about scale, as Dannif mentioned. You got proximity, concentration, and also the subsurface has to be right. So in that sense, Indonesia is of course very blessed with the right set of subsurface possibilities, reservoirs. If you look at an area like Cilegon, where we are close to pursuing this project together with Pertamina, you've got high concentration of CO2, and it is close by. We've been evaluating opportunities and a point-to-point CCS solution to connecting an emitter to a storage site is expensive because you're not able to achieve the scale. And that's why we're all here talking about hub systems, where you have multiple tenants making use of that system. But you need to start with an anchor tenant to build a critical mass and build momentum and to draw other customers to your site. And that's what we've seen in the Gulf Coast. The moment you have that infrastructure in place, it will attract other business. And what we see, steel manufacturing, low carbon data centers, they are naturally attracted to that infrastructure once you've built it. But you got to build it and you got to make it run. And that's really the challenge if you start from zero, which we are here today. And so I think later on in our discussion we'll go into that, but what is required to really get that going? And what is the spark that makes this grow? As I mentioned, we selectively working together with the government of Indonesia, but also with Pertamina, landed on Asri because it's close to Cilegon, where there's a lot of emissions. It's also a reasonable distance from places like Singapore, where you can attract other customers as well. That is, for us, a sufficient condition to really start a hub, a CCS hub here in Indonesia.
Thank you. And I think, as with Bella, there's a few topics there that we'll touch on in a bit more depth later on. I think certainly location is a key one. And scale, I think the hub and cluster versus point source argument. Perhaps if I can come to you, Pak Edi, from a slightly different industry. Just looking at how you see Indonesia and the potential for CCS, and particularly from non-oil and gas perspective.
Yeah, thank you for the question. From the perspective of Chandra Asri, as leading of the Southeast Asia, leading in energy, now we are shifting no longer more petrochemicals, now become the energy, chemicals, and infrastructure. Solutions company in I think hopefully that is the biggest in this area. So we see the carbon capture is the CCS is not just for compliance of the decarbonization, but also the strategic business opportunity. Is like Belladonna mentioned, this is the momentums, how to can make the CCS can be more faster, can move the availables, can be more affordable. And of course, the perspective of Chandra Asri is we are looking for the collaborations among others to get more efficient, to get the cost-wise issues can become more affordable among us. And like Pertamina, since his book, Pak Dannif mentioned, Pak Dannif see like the whole of Indonesia. But for Chandra Asri, I think since we are in Cilegons, luckily the name is almost the same. We are Chandra Asri, and then the locations ICCSC, the Sunda Asri. So we are, the idea is for us is how the position of Chandra Asri is become the aggregator, and also it's not just small emitters, but we have the very good networking in that area. Like we have the cements industry, we have the steels, also we have the power. So it is all that this area is connected to us, and we also have the facilities like with terminals. We have the storage that we operate since already 30 years. So I think this is the ecosystem is quite complete. So I think this is can support for this among these college that we can, the ecosystem can boost the efficiency, safety, and the competitiveness. And as Egon mentioned, we just recently finished our acquisitions of the Shell Energi. So now become the Astra Chemicals Energi. I think Mackenzie is now well sees how transferring this smoothly. Thank you so much. So with that situations, also we have now is finishing for the Chevron Phillips transferring to Chandra Asri. I think this makes more opportunity, especially for Chandra Asri, to integrate, become from the Singapore to Indonesia. So of course, this with this momentum, and also with the Exxon, so we can of course we can work together with the Pertamina and Chandra. So we hope that is with this together, we can more scalables and interconnected value chains across the South Asia. And I think this is position is unique advantage for us. And of course, my set is the collaboration matter is a lot to reduce the cost, increasing competitiveness, lower risk, increasing the safety, and increase the chance of success to make it faster with the work together between among these stakeholders.
Thank you. And I think to finish this essentially in an overture section, it's a good segue talking about Singapore to go to you, Keith, and just I get the perspectives of how Indonesia looks for Singapore, given that there's a good probability that some of your emissions might end up in the ground here.
Thank you. So Singapore is, from the earlier video that we started with, you could see that Singapore is one of the regional countries, together with South Korea, and Japan that are interested in exploring cross-border CCS. And Indonesia is a natural partner. There are many things that Singapore works with Indonesia on today, and cross-border CCS is a very natural issue, given that, a great opportunity, given that Indonesia has tremendous storage potential, humongous amounts of storage potential, far in excess of Singapore's needs for many, many decades or even centuries to come. So Singapore has been working with Indonesia at the G2G level. We have signed a letter of intent, and we are now working on an MOU. We know that we need to work on a G2G agreement with the Indonesian government in order for us to provide assurance to the investors and to the companies in the value chain of CCS. So that's something that we hope to, we do expect that we need to work on with the Indonesian government in the months ahead. And we hope to be able to conclude that quite quickly, in fact. Singapore is very serious about CCS. It is part of our commitments under our 2030 and our 2035 NDCs. For 2030, we've committed to, or in order to get to our 2030 NDCs, we expect that we would need to sequester about 2 to 2.5 million tons of CO2 around 2030 onwards, and that will increase from 2035 onwards. Naturally, Singapore is very small, so that's why we are looking to work with countries like Indonesia. We have started that process already. We have identified potential emitters in Singapore. We have started a process of identifying suitable transport and storage providers to support our CCS project. So that's ongoing, and we look forward to being able to work with Indonesia to further both Singapore's needs for CCS as well as Indonesia's longer-term needs for CCS. One final point is that we believe that Singapore, even though our demand for CCS is small, it can serve as the catalyst for further investments in Indonesia, because Indonesia's longer-term needs for CCS, whether for oil and gas exploration or for its own energy sector or for its hard-to-abate sectors like cement and steel, Indonesia's requirements are much bigger than Singapore. But we believe that Singapore's investments into CCS here in Indonesia can catalyze further investment and developments in Indonesia's own CCS capabilities.
Thank you, and thank you all. I think, as I said, that was a bit of an overture, and I think out of all of those responses popped up most of the themes that we're going to go through in a bit more detail. I wanted to move on and talk about the real key challenges. If I look at my experience in this sector and looking at different arenas doing CCS, what I've seen happen is that the sector tends to explode with a wave of optimism and lots of early stage activity, and then reality bites and the practicalities of making the business work and deliver returns loom large. So we need capture, midstream, storage to work together in tandem at the same pace. Perhaps, Keith, I can just keep you on the microphone and start with you and just talk about what do you see as the most difficult pieces of this jigsaw to address?
Yeah. There are many challenges with CCS because on paper it looks straightforward. Capture CCS, capture CO2 from a heavy emitter and you plug it into the ground. But for Singapore's perspective, I would say there are two big challenges. One is the value chain. There are many, if you have many emitters and you need to then have an aggregator and you need a transport and storage operator, the entire value chain becomes very challenging to manage. And how then do we allocate risks appropriately across the different parts of the value chain is a really big challenge. Who takes what sorts of risks? And some of these risks are also very new. They are not familiar to insurance providers, for example. So the government has to then think hard about its own role in providing some assurance or backstop to address some of these risks. that the different players in the CCS value chain have. The second complication is once we get into cross-border, because now CCS has been going on for many decades already in other countries elsewhere around the world, but often it is, in almost all cases, it is not cross-border, right? Even in the UK, there are large projects for CCS in the Netherlands, but these are within the borders of those countries. In Singapore's case, and I presume in the case of Japan and South Korea eventually, we will have to be grappling with the complexities of cross-border CCS. And then you have to deal with international guidelines and rules for carbon accounting. How do we deal with the liabilities of CO2 leakage if it is en route from from the exporting country to the importing country? These are complications that we need to work out and negotiate at the G2G level as well.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to Pak Dannif, if I may, and as Director of Finance, if someone comes to you with a CCS proposition, how are you going to decide where you allocate capital to in your organization when it's competing against, I guess, commodity oil and gas projects?
It's a good question, John. This is what I face, right? How to allocate capital. It is an ongoing discussions. Obviously, we cannot compare investment in CCS as a new segment compared with upstream that has been established, proven technologies, and we know expected return and risk has been given. So, but with our shareholders, right, we are having a serious discussion how to make it work, right? Because we don't only look at one project basis, right? We have to look at the multiplying impact or effect, right? That can be generated from the project, right? So we have to look at the long term. We not only look at one potential off-taker, right? We have to look at the potentials. Again, there's a lot of assumptions, but to start with, I guess to answer the questions, it cannot be the same as the upstream oil and gas return in order to make it work, right? This is just one piece of, I guess, component to make sure that it can be commercially viable.
I guess just quickly throwing that to you, Egon, I assume it's the same situation in ExxonMobil, that you have threshold returns that you have to hit.
That is correct, John. And to emphasize what Pak Dannif said, because he hit the nail on the head, sometimes we equate CCS as essentially the same as oil and gas, and it really is not. The CO2 molecule doesn't have an inherent value. It is a cost, whereas in oil and gas, a methane molecule has value. So the way you evaluate and make decisions on how do you invest in a CCS project has to be looked a little bit differently, still on a portfolio basis, but it has to adhere to different requirements. In the case here in Indonesia, and it's one of the questions that also came up on the screen here, when you think about the development of a CCS industry, this is not the same scale as maybe oil and gas. Well, we need a large amount of carbon capture and carbon storage. The operations are essentially fairly simple. What is really important, though, is that the subsequent effects of having the infrastructure, that is what is important. So it's not that carbon storage will create a lot of jobs, but having infrastructure to store CO2 will attract other industries to Indonesia that want to produce low carbon or no carbon products, like low carbon steel industry. That is where the growth in job will come from. And so hard to abate industries, cement, steel, manufacturing, these are all industries that are essential for the growth of Indonesia. So the ability to grow your economy and reduce emissions is something that we're looking at. And we run the numbers, and I think Bella maybe came from your center also, but I think the numbers were, if you able to store 1 million tons of CO2, that generates about 4 trillion rupiah in multiplier effect cash flow, as well as create 800 new jobs. Now think about that. That's a staggering amount of opportunity that this country has. When we look at ExxonMobil, and that's your original question there, John, we are looking at to build a plastic chemical manufacturing facility. And it has to be net zero emission, because that's our ambition, to be net zero emissions. So we need to have a carbon abatement solution before we even decide to where to invest to make that plant happen. And so for us, it's a prerequisite. There's going to be a CCS solution in place in order we can spend up to $10 billion to actually make that investment in a petchem facility. So for us, we don't necessarily invest in CCS as a standalone service, but it enables for other investments to happen. I think that's where and how we evaluate these opportunities. I think going back then to Indonesia, Indonesia has a chance to be a first mover. I suspect in the next 15 to 20 years, even though there's a lot of CO2 being emitted, the amount of CO2 that can be collected effectively and economically is somewhat limited. So Indonesia is in the running and is in competition with other nations to attract that first CCS hub. But whoever wins that race should be able to leverage into economic growth just from having that infrastructure there.
Thank you. And maybe a question to you, Bella. Just in terms of key challenges, given your experience in dealing with developing the regulations and the bilaterals, from the regulatory perspective, what do you see as what's been the most difficult thing to overcome in that side of the fence?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, John. I mean, Indonesia just has a new government, right? And then in terms of the regulatory framework, I think the challenges that we're facing right now, is the coordination of the cross-sectoral industries, because CCS is involving cross-sectorals, you name it, from the industries sector, from the oil and gas, energy, and also from forestry and many more. So there are many stakeholders that have to play important roles to be coordinated and then to be facilitated and so on. So then, in terms of the regulatory framework, for example, we developed the presidential regulation for CCS, was just less than within 8 months. So I think it was just one of the good example, a great effort of the coordination and also leadership. I think we do need that one to make the regulatory framework to move forward in terms of the derivative and technical guidelines. So as I mentioned previously, that Indonesia previously was leading in terms of the regulatory framework development, and then we were recognized by the GCCSI annual report. We were the #1 Asian countries ranked in terms of regulatory framework in CCS. But then looking at the current situation right now, with the neighboring countries have their own acts and bills and so on, I think Indonesia has to keep up the momentum and pace, and then debottlenecking all the bottlenecks that we are facing right now. So for example, currently we're helping the Ministry of Investment to develop the KBLI, which is the classification for the investment for certain industries, and then CCS, it wasn't really defined at the KBLI for that certain CCS industry. So we're helping Ministry of Investment to develop these KBLI. And then we are also supporting in terms of, for example, how we can generate the revenue stream from the voluntary carbon market. So we're helping, for example, the Ministry of Environment to develop these more environmentally friendly for the voluntary carbon market, where later on the CCS industries stakeholders can benefit from the voluntary carbon market as well. And then I think the third one, we do aware that Indonesia has many ministries and coordinating ministries and agencies that are involved within the CCS landscape. But Indonesia CCS Center, we're trying to support the government as much as we can, and then giving a concrete action. So currently we are also supporting the National Energy Council, which is DEN, we call it here, to develop the new KEN, Kebijakan Energi Nasional, the National Energy Policy that will include CCS, and then with more economic, viable, and then bankable projects and so on. So I think we try to do what we can as much as we can in our position as an independent think tank organization supporting many stakeholders, including the government, to develop the regulatory framework. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess I'd like to move on to talk a bit about collaboration and synergies. This is a new asset class, it's a new sector. Cost management is going to be critical. So I wanted to, I guess, first explore, perhaps with you, Pak Edi, how collaboration is going to be really necessary and what types of collaboration we can expect to see.
Yeah, I think the collaboration is the key of this, one of the key success of these CCS efforts, especially for the cross-border policy that can be happen in the future. So the collaboration for us is we are very welcome, since our motto is your partner to growth. I think this is in terms of the Chandra Asri, we are very happy to work together to ensure and bring down the cost is to become more efficient, especially for this CCS effort. So that is the idea is collaboration, that how we can together to build the kind of the CCS hub, especially for example in Cilegon, for example, because the market is there and also the facilities is ready. But I think of course the collaboration must be included the pentahelic stakeholders like business and also the governments and also the NGO, media, etc., even the investment. I think for this, the collaboration, especially for Chandra, I see we are ready for that. We are happy to collaborate and we committed for this collaboration among the stakeholders.
Thank you. And maybe another one for Egon. As a major project developer, there are tons and tons of interfaces that need to be managed. Just really asking how ExxonMobil approaches that with all the counterparties involved in a CCS project, things like partnerships, technology agreements, etc.
Yes, John. Collaboration is absolutely critical in but still I would say a nascent industry. Even though we have been doing carbon capture sequestration for decades, carbon capture is capital intensive. It is complex, as Keith then mentioned, and it's also for the long term. It's not something that you do for a couple of years. It is for decades, and sometimes into in perpetuity, as you want to keep the CO2, of course, permanently stored. So partnerships to do a couple of things. For one, for us, partnerships are important to reduce the cost of capture. If you look at the value chain, the majority of the costs are in the capture side, especially when the concentration of CO2 is getting less and less. So we have strong partnerships in that particular technology. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, UOP, and others, where we are continuously finding and trying to reduce the cost of the capture technology. That's important. Also, when we think about shipping, as you mentioned, cross-border CCS is almost non-existent. We got the Northern Lights in Norway. So the first ships are on the market, but those are relatively small compared to the size of ships that you need here in Asia Pacific, where the distances are so much longer. So collaboration on logistics and ship design, shipbuilding is also absolutely key. And then lastly, closer back home here, of course, in Indonesia, working together with Pertamina. Asri is very fortunate in that the reservoir that we are looking at to utilize for CO2 storage is one of the largest we've seen in Southeast Asia. It's about a gigaton on a P50 basis, and probably larger than that. And so Working together with Pertamina, the data that they collected in the years of producing from that area was very helpful to high-grade, relatively fast-tracked this reservoir in order to get approval for us internally to pursue it, because what we see is a very attractive way to store the CO2. So collaboration is absolutely critical. Now, one point maybe to go back to cross-border, a lot of things need to happen to make cross-border work. But I think what it comes down to ultimately, and with any collaboration, is trust. How do you create trust and durability? And durability is something that we need to talk about when you have a project that may last for 50 years. And so stability in your regulations, stability in your contracts is absolutely crucial to make this work.
Great, thank you. And I thought we might get a bit of a stay of execution because we started late, but I'm being told that we need to wrap up earlier. I think we did get a chance, I think, in the kind of starting the overture to raise the themes, and perhaps I can just summarize a little bit. I think, you know, Indonesia's made great strides to the current time, and there's great potential to move forward. It's got fantastic potential to be a major regional hub. We talked about the challenges. I think the cross-border part of this is going to be critical. I think that's both pipeline and shipping. I think with regulations, learnings from other regimes in other parts of the world are going to be important to help inform how Indonesia, what the best things for Indonesia are. Collaboration, incredibly important. This has to be a joint effort. And things like standardization need to come in. Things like shipping, you know, we can't have a smorgasbord of different types of solutions. And I think at the end of it all, the societal benefits for Indonesia and the future generations look very promising. So unfortunately, we have to wrap up a wee bit earlier than the time we originally had, but I'd just like to thank the panel for joining me.
Let's give a big applause to this panel. And now I'd like to invite everyone to please stand up, and we would use this moment for memento delivery to all of the speakers and moderator. And now for this, I would like to invite to the stage Ibu Mariolin Wayong, Ibu Meti, and Bapak Haryadi Budiman from the IPA board to deliver the mementos to all speakers and moderator for this session. And very exciting panel indeed. We heard stories of best practices and success stories from other countries as well that can be applied to accelerate CCUS adoption and to maximize its economic impact in Indonesia. Also, ways to enhance domestic industry competitiveness and ensuring compliance with global decarbonization commitments by examining its economic benefits, learning from international best practices, and optimizing its use for premium low-carbon products. Once again, we thank all speakers for the insights and information on this panel. All right, and we invite Ibu Meti as well as Pak Hari untuk berfoto bersama, to have pictures together. Let's face the cameras and smile, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to count down in 3, 2, 1. All right, one more time, 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much, speakers. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Ibu Meti, Pak Hari, and you may return to your seats. Okay, it's getting a little bit late in the afternoon, but we promise there's going to be another, one session left for today, and it is on how the increasing demand of energy cannot be divided or separated from the advancement of technology. Yes. So we do hope that everyone stays in Nusantara Hall as we'll continue with the last panel of the day right after this.